To replace the hip air valve bank, the first thing we need to do is power off the chair, then unplug it. Next, we need to open the levers on the inline connector and remove the wiring from both sides. If you're working on the chair that's connected to a kiosk system, remove the kiosk cable harness from the cable guide, as well as the cable from the main PCB. Next, we'll use a Phillips head screwdriver to remove the 3 screws that secure the rear shroud to the chair. Then we can slide the shroud backward and then tip it over, resting it on the floor next to the chair. Okay, next we'll use the Phillips head screwdriver again to remove the 3 screws that secure the PCB cover. And we can remove that cover. You'll need to pull it firmly at the rear as there are tabs installed over slots that have a rather secure connection. Next, we'll use a Phillips head screwdriver to remove the 6 screws that secure the backrest cover. Then we can remove the cover. Next, we'll use a Phillips head screwdriver to remove the 4 screws that secure the hip air valve bank to the chair. Then we can tip up that air valve bank to expose the hoses and use a light colored Sharpie to number those hoses from 1 to 3, beginning in the front. This will ensure that we reinstall the hoses in the proper order. Okay, once the hoses are marked, then we can remove the hoses from the fittings, trying to make sure you don't erase the Sharpie writing with your fingers. And finally, we can disconnect the connectors and remove the air valve bank from the chair. Okay, to install the new air valve bank then, we can reconnect those connectors with the red and black wire in the front and the yellow and black in the rear. And then we can reconnect the hoses to the fittings in the proper order. Okay, then we can place the air valve bank into position, aligning the screw holes with the mounting posts. And replace the 4 screws to secure it. Okay, now we're ready to replace the backrest cover by installing the tabs at the bottom of the cover into the slots that are on the chair. And then lifting the cover up into position and replacing the screws to secure it. After installing the screws, use your fingers to check and make sure the tabs are still installed in the slots. Okay, now we're ready to replace the PCB cover. Note the tabs in the rear of the PCB area. You need to install the slots on the PCB tray over those tabs and push down firmly to secure it. Use your hands to make sure that the slots are installed successfully over those tabs. The screw holes will then be aligned, and you can replace the 3 screws to secure the cover. Okay, next we need to remove the 9 screws that secure the plastic panel to the underside of the shroud. Then we can twist the ends of that remotely controlled system cable and feed it through the hole we drilled in the rear of the shroud. Next, we're going to install a zip tie temporarily on the casing, just on the outside of the shroud, just to keep that wiring from falling back into the shroud while we're reinstalling the shroud on the chair. Okay, then we can replace that black plastic panel and the 9 screws to secure it. Okay, then we can flip that shroud back over carefully into position, putting as little strain on that cable as possible, and slide it into position. Now it's important that the edges of the shroud are installed between the black plastic side panels and the guides. In this case, it is not, so you can see he had to move the shroud over to the outside of the guide, so it's installed between the guide and the side panel. Okay, once the shroud's installed properly, we can replace the 3 screws to secure it. Then we can use a wire cutter to cut that temporary zip tie carefully off of the cable. Twist the ends of the wires. Then we'll install them into the inline connector. If the chair is connected to a T-Max system, it doesn't matter which slot each wire goes into. If it's connected to a kiosk system, then we need the positive wire on the right and the negative on the left, or the blue wire on the right and the green wire on the left. Once the wiring's inserted all the way, you can close the orange levers to secure it. Okay, if you're working on a system that has a kiosk harness, you can place the kiosk harness into the cable guide. And then we can install the wiring into the other side of the inline connector. Again, with the kiosk system, the positive wire needs to be on the right and the negative on the left. Okay, then we can plug in the chair, power it on, and we're done.